Perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Amber, before we get into the heavy parts of your story, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. I've learned a lot of lessons this year. If you're not learning, you're dying, right? One of my lessons that I've learned is to surround yourself with good people. And so I'm picking teams to work with, and it's nice when you get to work with your friends.
Amber, people see the speaker, the coach, the advocate, the success story, but I want to know, who is Amber Rodgers beyond headlines and achievements?
Oh, I'm somebody who loves water. I love to be out on the water, any type of water. But really, my passion truly is helping other people and seeing them grow. I think that we all face challenges. Life isn't perfect, but it's what we do with that and how we take our stories. And really, I believe stories can help people, right? And I try to be as transparent as possible.
Do you surf, by the way?
No. Well, I used to a little bit, but then I had an accident. So I like to be on the yacht and just kind of hang out or kayak. I love to kayak
Kayak. So who had an accident?
on a surfboard.
Okay, I'm not good at it either, but I know how to do it, but it's just a learning curve for me.
I think I'm a
So,
little too old for that now.
did you say you're old for that?
I'd prefer just to be in my kayak.
I don't think you look old to me. You look, I reckon you're in a perfect shape. You're good to go for as surfing is concerned.
You made my day.
All right. So, what makes your story so powerful is that the transformation didn't happen from a place of comfort. So, what I want to know, Amber, is if someone had met you during the lowest point in your life, what would they have seen?
That's an interesting thing to bring up. I'm somebody who is very good, and it's part of one of my disorders, which is borderline personality disorder. I'm very good at masking my pain. I don't like to cry in front of people,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like to put my problems on other people. And that is part of the problem, right? I have an inner circle of people that know what I've dealt with, but if you met me, you wouldn't know what was going on. I don't let that stuff out.
So you do that on purpose so that people don't know what's going on with your life?
I don't know. It's just something that I've always done. And I kind of grew up that way because I grew up in such an abusive home that I guess I was trained at such an early age to put on a mask or a face in
Yeah.
public. I'm not saying that's healthy, but I'm just saying that's what I have always done.
Alrighty. Amber, at what point did you decide your story need to be shared publicly?
When I started my company, the initial company that I started, which was a divorce company, and it was so interesting just by sharing what I experienced going through the divorce, how many people needed help through that transition in life. So
Okay.
that's when I really realized how important it was to share it. And then I worked for a PR firm for a long time.
Okay.
And he's told me his story sell. I guess between those two.
Now let's talk about your childhood and some mental health struggle. To truly understand the strength behind your comeback, I think we need to go back to the beginning. What was your childhood like growing up?
It was very turbulent because when it was good, it was great. And that's often what in abusive homes. When I was young, we had a big estate and had golf carts and all kinds of fun toys, and it was great. But there was so much fighting in the home, and I was the oldest. So I accepted the role of getting the kids out of the house. So it's very difficult. And I was talking about this just yesterday because I did, for a lot of my life, grow up upper middle class. So
Okay.
I think even in that abuse isn't talked about widely. And so you're constantly trying to hide what's going on at home. But what it did for me at a very early age was I formed such special relationships outside of my home that are still very significant in my life today.
All right, so there used to be fight among family members all the time?
Oh, my parents fought a lot, but when they weren't fighting, they were best friends. And so I
Okay.
like caught in the middle, and it would be like my mom would say, "Oh, I'm going to leave." I was her new best friend, and then dad's trying to win you over. So you're just constantly caught in this war, but when it was good, it was great, right? It's very confusing as a child because you get this imprint or image of what love is that isn't healthy from such a young age.
So, Amber, when did you first realize you were struggling mentally or emotionally in a way that felt different from others around you?
Well, and I want to go back to something. When I was young, I was assaulted sexually by a person
So, you were sexually assaulted.
at 14.
All right.
And I didn't tell on him. I also had a stalker at that time. And something that I want people who are living in abuse that have children to know is that if you think you're staying and helping your children, predators prey when they see weakness in the home. It's not by coincidence, but by the time I was 14, I was sexually assaulted and had a stalker. I did not tell on the person who did that to me, and he ended up killing my best friend. So I was
Oh.
involved in a capital murder trial. So from a very young age, I didn't feel like everybody else.
Did you open up to your mom and dad at that time?
When the FBI came in, when my friend was missing, is when
Hmm.
I actually finally told. No, because I didn't trust my parents. They had their own issues all the time.
Yeah.
And I was also fearful of my dad would do to him because my dad always said, if anybody hurts you or touches you in that way, I'm going to take them out. There were kind of two reasons I didn't talk about it, but that changes you. And so I didn't feel like my peers because I'd gone
Okay.
through so much.
That's really intense, deep down. It's a sad story that this has happened with you. Amber, so you have spoken openly about navigating complex systems of care for over 17 years. Where do you believe those systems failed you the most?
Where do you start? Number one, I think that people really need to understand the link between trauma and mental health. When I was first committed, I did have a breakdown. I was around 32 and I had a lot of stress and pressure from every angle. I was starting a business, I was worried about my children, I was going through a divorce, I'm trying to date. You just got so much going on. And when they first committed me, after that, my parents, who abused me my whole life, and then my ex husband petitioned for custody. And that scarred me for it. Just, you're never the same. And what other illness would anybody just take their children away? If you have cancer, they don't take your children away. So, in my opinion, the systems definitely need to address the trauma. They need to look at who the children are being given to or who's
That's right.
petitioning for that. Had they diagnosed me properly and addressed the trauma instead of what ended up happening, the past 17 years of my life would not have been as destructive as it was. And I really think that we need to start looking at some of that.
How many children were taken from you?
I At the time they were taken, they were 6 and 7. They're 22 and 23 now. So they're my only two children.
Okay, and that time they were with their dad.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And
Mm.
I really had, once I was diagnosed, there was no real way to, even with an attorney, fight it. And again, I just think that what needs to happen in a situation like that is that the trauma is addressed and proper care and counseling comes in, not just throwing medication and throwing labels on people, right? Let's address what's going on in the family and make sure that the right things happen for the children as well.
Law allowed you to see your children.
It was on and off. And there are a lot of things I realize now, 17 years later, how much the system was used to hurt me emotionally and financially and in many ways. And again, there needs to be laws, there needs to be understanding, and there needs to be ways to protect people like myself. Because I do indeed have mental illness. I have several diagnoses. I have complex PTSD,
Yeah.
I have borderline, I have ADD, OCD. I'm not going to react like you would in a situation because of my background and my trauma. But understanding that instead of just slapping people in hospitals and medicating them, there's just so much broken in the system.
It is. And Amber, I think a lot of people hear the phrase mental health crisis, but they don't really understand what that feels like internally. So, what does a real mental health crisis actually feel like from the inside?
It's a nightmare. It's a battle with yourself, especially with the borderline that I deal with, because with borderline, you have what is called suicidal ideation.
Yes.
And in fact, just again, yesterday, somebody was asking me, like, how many suicide notes have you written? I said, probably a million. You're just constantly fighting this struggle of, do I stay or do I go? And again, a lot of times it does impact relationships and jobs, and you're fighting sometimes financially. People don't understand. It's a living nightmare, to be 100%, until you get the proper support and diagnosis and you address the trauma. If I can say anything, we are as sick as our secrets, right?
That's right.
Gotta address the trauma.
Amber, was there ever a moment when you felt completely abandoned by the systems or people who were supposed to help you at that time
Oh,
when you had mental breakdown?
100%. It started in my childhood, right? The people who were supposed to protect me did not protect me. And then I was actually deemed last year a crisis victim in the state of Texas
Okay.
because I had been in so many hospitals, and then I even ended up in jail, which is just I can't even explain the terror that I went through. So one of the things that I'm hoping to do is to get some laws passed so that if you're ever in a crisis situation, which I was in, that the state or somebody steps in and gives you a plan, right? Because it was indeed a crisis. How do you deem somebody a crisis victim and throw them back out? And then they rearrested me. It was a nightmare. I'm still unraveling part of those situations, and that's been a year ago.
Would you be able to explain in brief what happened with you, why you were behind bars?
Yes, I had been in 5 mental hospitals, and my children unfortunately were convinced I was still manic. And I do have mental health issues and trauma, so I wasn't responding like my normal behavior because I finally wanted to fight to free my name. And so because the hospitals wouldn't take me back, literally, I had just been in so many, they got me on what was called a criminal trespass. At that
Okay.
point, the state stepped in and deemed me a crisis victim. The second time it happened is just so unbelievable. My purse and beach bag were stolen out of my car.
Oh,
And it had an air tag because my fob had an air tag on it.
yeah.
And when that happened, I went into almost complete shock because, mind you, I'd already been in 5 hospitals and arrested once. And I told the police officers what was happening. And instead of making sure I got somewhere safe or getting my items, which had an air tag on them, I was there alone for 15 hours. I didn't have a phone that was working because my phone was dead.
Hmm.
After the 15 hours, I was arrested at a Care Now on another criminal trespass.
Where was it? In Houston, Florida, or where was it?
This happened in Denton, Texas.
Oh, okay.
It's been a complete nightmare to try to unravel all this. There's 13 jurisdictions involved in my situation, and including the hospitals. So that's another thing that I think really has to change. There's got to be some communication between these hospitals and the legal side of things. Because trust me, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, I do
My
agree.
story might be the one you're hearing, but there's a lot of people that are dealing with mental health issues that don't need to be in jail that are sitting there right now. And it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. But all the charges against you, were they ever proved in the court of law?
They were completely dismissed because of the mental health side of it. In fact, I didn't even have to pay any fees. The mental health department then stepped back in and got me back out. I had to go to a court afterwards. But I want to talk on the positive side of this, right?
Yes.
It's the irony of this. So the irony is that the business that I built to help people go through divorce actually is the network that saved my life.
Oh,
The people I knew that
yeah.
stepped in to help me, because literally this left me penniless and homeless.
But this is insane. I find it to put it in this way. No charges were proved against you. You were behind bars. You struggled for almost over 17 years. You were named or called as mentally retarded, if I can put it in this way.
Well, I didn't hurt anybody. I was actually felt like I was about to have a panic attack. So I went to the doctor. And again, I know my situation sounds unbelievable. And trust me, had I not lived it, I wouldn't believe it myself. But I lived it. And while I was in jail, which I was there 15 days the first time and 15 days the second time, mind you, I wasn't able to work for 3 months prior to that because I was in the hospitals, then I'm in jail. I met other people who were in very similar situations. And it's just tragic. And we've got to come together and really address these problems that are happening.
Amber, what are some of the biggest misconceptions society has about struggling with mental health challenges or trauma?
I think that somebody looks at me from the outside and they don't get I'm sick. I always will have the diagnosis. They are not going away. But I think looking at the outside, and there's been times I've literally said it more than once, like I would have rather been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, because at least then the family comes together and people are around and your friends and family are around and you look sick, people are there. With mental health, people just think that you're manipulating or being dramatic, or maybe that you can just change and that it's your choice. When in fact, I'm responding to trauma that when I respond out of character that I didn't create. I didn't create the abuse. I didn't create the things that happened. But they do cause me to have a different reaction than somebody without the disorders that I deal with have.
Mental health is a problem not outside, it's inside. To a naked eye, it cannot be seen. But
Right.
someone struggling with mental problems, they need external support, I reckon, at that time. And that is what you didn't get it when you wanted it to be.
And luckily, I did have a lot of external support through my friends, and actually through the company I created, I formed a lot of those friendships. And that's a part of the reason I'm really speaking out, because had I not had that network, I can't even tell you I would have survived it. And I know there's a lot of people out there that feel alone, and I'm just encouraged them to reach out to somebody. It's very difficult. There needs to be more resources, because I was blessed. I had this huge network that I had built that in turn saved my life.
Indeed. So, Amber, now this next chapter in your life is incredibly intense because at one point your journey led to homelessness. So, what led to that period in your life?
Well, all the hospitalizations. I've been now committed 31 times in 17 years. And also because of what I have, my disorder, I have a very hard time in relationships with men. And so I would start like, it was just very ironic. And so again, I kind of want to talk about the fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I've always had the ability to build businesses and to connect with people. So I would get into a business, I would start thriving, and I would think, oh, I'm ready for a relationship. One of them was yachting. I was working on these mega yachts. I meet this broker. I think, oh, he's the one. He's it finally, because I've always been searching for that unconditional love that I never had as a child, right?
That's right.
I start dating him. And then when it didn't work out, he's just one example, I fell apart. I ended up losing my job. I obsessed over him. It was horrible. We're now friends, which is funny. I call him the boy who got me fired. But he's in my book that I'm writing and a potential something else I'm working on. But yeah, the relationships. And that's one thing that I'm going to have to be cognizant about for the rest of my life is anybody that I date. Because if you look at my life, I don't know how much you've ever heard about like Marilyn Monroe, but
Yeah,
she
no, I
had,
know. I know Marilyn Monroe. Everyone knows about her.
right, she had the same disorder that I have. And if you look at her life, she did a lot of what I did. Like she would allow these relationships with men to destroy her. And so that's just something that I'll forever have to be very cautious about.
On the same note, I'm going to ask you this right now. Talking about relationships, what kind of men normally you like? White, brown, black, or Asian?
Oh, no, that's not it. It's not the color. It's not that. I love successful men. And unfortunately for me, I like narcissists. That's what a lot of borderlines actually attract narcissists. I'm not saying all the guys I've dated are narcissists. I like really smart and successful men that are entrepreneurs. And I think that as an entrepreneur, you kind of just think different, right?
Yes,
And
that's right.
so it's really hard to date somebody who's not in that same kind of atmosphere because we're hard to understand, right? We work like crazy hours. We don't come home at 5 and set work down. We might be up till 4 in the morning writing a story or making a strategy or a plan. Yeah, so I like entrepreneurs. I'm trying to stay away from the narcissists though.
I reckon this is a good idea. So, Amber, what was the hardest part about being homeless? The most people never see or understand.
So again, fortunately for me, I could have, and I was about to end up literally on the streets. I had nowhere to go. I believe in God and it doesn't matter to me what anybody else's belief system is. I just know that's part of my story, right? That it is the craziest thing for me. I believe God put the right people in my life. And again, I don't care what anybody else's faith is. That's their decision, but I know that faith helped me survive. But I'm going to give you just a crazy example. So after I was out of jail, I had no cell phone, no ID, no credit card. I had nothing. Fortunately, my daughter put me in a hotel room one night, and that was traumatic in itself. You should be the one helping your kids, not having your children do that. But there was a Bible next to the bed. And so I took it and I started writing phone numbers. I literally didn't even have a cell phone at this point.
Okay.
And I walked into a restaurant and I was crying in the corner. So this gentleman walks up, and if you look a certain way, you're used to guys coming up to you. I wasn't looking that way. I didn't have makeup on. I didn't have my hair done. And he just says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm going through some stuff." Another friend was meeting me, but I write his phone number down, right? He ended up letting me stay with him for 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
He didn't know me. He's the greatest guy. We're now great friends. He didn't take advantage of me. He didn't try to hurt me. I'm not saying this was us, but it was my only option. Otherwise, I was going to be on the street. And another situation like that happened in Palm Beach when I was there. I just happened to meet a girl on a boat, and I went through a situation there that I ended up in the hospital and I was suicidal. She let me stay with her. Fortunately, I've never lived on the street per se, but I have had situations where I had nothing. I didn't have a penny, and somebody was generous enough to take me in. To be honest, I'm living with a friend right now as I'm rebuilding all of my stuff. And again, it goes back to, had I not had that network, I would be homeless right now.
I reckon there are good people everywhere. Yeah, if you have bad people, there are good people to help you out.
Yeah. And I want to say this too, and something that I've definitely learned this past year is that, yes, there are so many great people in this world. And luckily, I'm surrounded by so many of them. But a few bad people can really bring you down. And the mistake I've made repeatedly that I will no longer make again is that if somebody is abusing me, I'm going to tell the truth. And there's always red flags, right?
But
I was so conditioned to abuse that I didn't recognize it. I know that sounds strange, but I don't want people to be me. I don't want them to be 49 and single and going, oh my gosh, what could I have done different? Number one, if you're being abused, get out and tell. And that's it. And you can never heal from going back to an abuser unless they do change in some way. You just won't. I've had to cut my mother out of my life, and I'm okay with that. I'm at peace because she refuses to tell the truth about what I've been through. And that's done damage with my relationship with my children and other parts of my life. Sometimes you've got to cut even blood family out if they,
yeah, that's
because the way I grew up, right? Sure, my dad was the ultimate aggressor and abuser, but she enabled that. And the only way to break that generational abuse is to talk about it.
Are you able to see your children now?
I do. It has been difficult, but we're healing it. So, yep.
All right. And then, Amber, when you're living in a survival mode every single day, mentally, emotionally, what kept you going?
My kids really helped. That was part of it. My friends, my support system, and my faith. That's it.
Faith in God?
Yes, that was mine. Again, I know people have different belief systems, but I have faith in God, and I believe He placed the right people in my life to help me survive.
Yeah, I
And
think so.
survival doesn't always look pretty, right? The things I've had to do to survive have not been fun. And it's very scary, especially when you have complex PTSD, to be in those situations where you don't have a safe home.
That's
And
right.
so I can't even put words on how scary it is when you're in a situation where you don't have money, you don't have a home, you no longer have a car. Your brain almost doesn't stop working. How am I going to get out of this? What am I going to do? And for me, yes, it was my faith ultimately.
And was there a moment where you genuinely believed your life would never recover?
There were 13 jurisdictions involved. There was a very good police department, the Colony Police Department, hats off to them. They had a mental health team. And I think that is something that needs to be integrated in all the police departments. So they understood quite quickly that something was going on. And when they started looking at my history, they pulled up so many suicide notes. He was literally like, when is this one from? They had them on file. The police did,
Yeah,
because there have been so many. So, yes, repeatedly. And it's a terrible place to be.
it is. And Amber, one of the most heartbreaking parts of your story is hearing how mental health crisis can sometimes be treated like criminal behavior based on medical emergencies. So you have spoken about encounters with law enforcement during moments you actually needed medical care. Can you share what happened?
There's two sides of that. And trust me, I know I'm not alone in this because this is ironic. A guy I dated many years ago, his brother sat in jail for 2 years waiting to get medical treatment. He
Okay.
actually had schizophrenia. And I actually got that story in the media here. And that's kind of when I saw how broken the legal side was. I didn't ever think I'd end up there. But there's one time in particular, it was in 2017, and I had gone to my ex husband's house and I was extremely upset because I was helping his mom, who is like my mom, clean her house, and he wouldn't come over and help. And at the house, my driver's license was still there. I still got mail there. So I thought by law, I was still allowed to be there. So I'm very angry at him. I'm on fire. I call the police and I say, I am going to my ex husband's house. I want some stuff from there because I was going to take some pictures and stuff back to his mom's house.
Okay.
They end up arresting me. And I knew at that point that I did need some medical attention. And I was literally beaten in the jail. Was
Literally beaten,
literally
Jill.
beaten. And not long after that happened, somebody died in a jail in another city in the same situation. They were experiencing mental health trauma. So I was experiencing trauma. I knew it. And I was angry and I was upset with my ex-husband. And instead of them taking me to the hospital, which was what I needed, they took me to jail. I completely freaked out at that point, and then they literally beat me. And they even put a bag over my face. I honestly thought I was going to die. And then I went to a hospital. Finally, the mental health team came in and they saw I was in such bad condition that they put me in a medical hospital. And I literally was almost in kidney failure because I was so dehydrated. It was so, in fact, I haven't really even publicly talked about that, but it does happen. And I swear, shortly after that, somebody passed away and died. And that was the other thing that was happening, because I really want to talk about this. When your family doesn't understand or doesn't validate the abuse that caused the mental health problems, you need to pivot away from your family and get a support system outside of them. But by standards of the mental health side, right, if you don't have a supportive family, it is very difficult. I think that's another breakdown with the mental health side, is that they don't teach the families or educate the families on what to do in these situations.
Had your family been there and supported you, things would have been very different?
Oh, 100%. Number one, had I grown up in a loving family, I wouldn't have the mental health issues. Because again, predators don't prey on healthy families.
That's
There
right.
is a reason I was sexually assaulted and had a stalker at the same time, and I was 14 years old. And frankly, I should have been taken out of the house. CPS had been called up the year before.
You were sexually assaulted how many times? Only once or more than once, multiple times?
More than once.
Okay.
And so you've got to really, there were so many unfortunate failures in my situation that I can't dwell on it, right? Again, it is the ultimate story, because the very business I started to help people through divorce and the people that I supported and the network that I built through that saved my life. It's incredible.
It is. And how dangerous is it when people experiencing mental health crises are misunderstood instead of supported?
I think it's extremely dangerous. Fortunately, I'm not a violent person, right? Because I lost a loved one to murder at such a young age. She was like my sister. But it's dangerous for the police officers who are responding. It's dangerous for anybody living with them. It can be very dangerous. Still to this day, I believe there's not anything on my record. I've been on 31 mental hospitals. I could go get a gun. Again, laws need to be changed. It's extremely dangerous. It's dangerous for our first responders. It's dangerous for the family. It's dangerous for the person involved. It's dangerous all around.
And Amber, looking back now, what did you need most during that period of your life?
I needed real counselors. There is a gentleman, his name is Harville Hendrix.
Okay.
He's written a book called Keeping the Love You Find. In fact, I get the pleasure of working with him next week. I highly suggest Keeping the Love You Find for anybody to read, because had the childhood trauma been addressed and had properly been counseled instead of just fed meds and shipped from one hospital to another, things would be very different for me.
Okay. And what did rock bottom teach you about humanity, survival, and yourself?
It taught me compassion, right? I will talk to anybody. I don't care if they're standing on the street and they're homeless or if they're a billionaire. And trust me, because I have been around both homelessness and billionaires, which is legit, I can tell you this. Everybody is struggling with something. Nobody has the perfect life.
It may look like a perfect life for someone who is most of the time on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Their life look very normal, very perfect. On the contrary, the real life is not.
And again, we're as sick as our secrets. So do not cover for somebody who's abusing you. I wish I would have learned this a long time ago. I have a new rule. I have new boundaries. Boundaries are important. And so, yeah, I learned a lot through this journey, but be compassionate. And people are so quick to judge, right? I invite anybody. I had this conversation with my uncle the other day. He's said stuff to me, and I said, listen, I invite you to walk my journey and have done a better job. Have I made mistakes? I'm here to tell you, I've made all the mistakes. I've dated all the wrong men. I've self-medicated. I've done it, right? And fine if people want to judge me for that, but they didn't live it.
I'll tell you something. There's a saying in English, I don't know who said it. Someone's opinion about me does not have to become my reality. That is what I believe.
100%.
It's my life. I
Right.
am responsible for my own actions, and that is what everything is all about.
You know what's interesting? Most of my close guy friends are gay just because I've been damaged a lot by straight men. I have this whole circle and lots of gay friends. And talk about a community that's been judged and hurt and put through it. It's not my business what they're doing in their bedroom, right? If it's not harming somebody, it's none of my business.
Precisely. It doesn't make a big difference to me who's doing what and who is what. If someone is lesbian or someone is gay or someone is something else, I don't give a damn about it because they're not doing anything wrong to me.
Right.
So now I'm going to shift your story and I want to ask you something about your public life. So what I'm going to ask you is, your story eventually reached a national audience after appearing on the Dr. Phil show. It was a big show. I don't think it's there anymore, is it? Is it
No,
still there?
I've seen parts of it like on YouTube. That was 9 years ago. And the one thing that I say about that show, Dr. Phil said something very important. He said, the only way this works is if everybody here is authentic. And he also pointed out that somebody on stage was lying, which indeed they were. There were police records from 1980 from the abuse I had in my house. I was born in 77, okay? And the police records went all the way, they found them all the way back to 1980. Because my family was not willing to be authentic, that process was very hard on me. But I did get some good treatment out of that. I ended up in Palm Beach, Florida, in a treatment center. They were dual diagnosis. I didn't really identify with the addiction part, but I really did get some good treatment with the mental health side. That's where they first found the stack trauma and the complex PTSD.
And talking about Dr. Phil's show, how did that opportunity first happen?
I reached out to him because I was very stressed. I again got involved with the wrong guy.
Mhm.
There's a whole book of me, 50 Shades of Amber. He told me he was going to help me fund my business, but he was actually a con artist. And so when I started telling people what he was doing, he actually got charges filed on me. So I went to jail for telling the truth. He later went to prison for federal fraud. But ironically enough, because of that, and at that juncture, and because I was overwhelmed with my business and everything going on, I reached out to Dr. Phil personally.
And how did you reach out to him? By email or social media?
Yeah, I did it by email.
Oh,
I
I didn't know that all the celebrities, they do read their emails and they do respond back. So if he has done it,
well,
good on him.
actually, they were getting 50,000 emails a day. Let me just point something out.
Yeah.
Dr. Phil wasn't the first time I had made national media because my company, DIVAS, Divorcing Independent Very Able
You've written a
Survivors.
book on it as well.
Yes, I did. It hasn't been put out, ever published, and I have a new one coming out. But that company made national news. I was even in USA Today. So Dr. Phil wasn't my first national exposure. But yeah, so it's very ironic how it's happened. And I will say this. So even when I had the company, especially here in Texas, because that's where I started the company, I was literally like a local celebrity. So losing that when it ultimately didn't work was very hard on me. But ironically, it saved my life. Again, nobody can really make this story up. I'm committed to bringing something like that back that helps people through divorce and deals with the mental health side as well.
And Amber, what was going through your mind before sharing deeply personal experiences on national television when you were with Dr. Phil on his show?
What was on my mind was that I needed help and I needed to get help. It was very intimidating. It didn't exactly turn out how I thought it was going to, and that's okay. It's in the past. I will say, even in this juncture and knowing some of the projects I'm working out and knowing that I'm going to be once again in the media a lot, there is a bit of nervousness and pressure around that. And a big part of that for me is not necessarily myself. I don't do anything because I needed to be famous and I know my story is going to help a lot of people. My biggest concern is what impact it'll have on my kids by sharing the story, being public, being out there. Even though they're adults, that's my number one concern. That's a little nerve wracking. And I've been there before. When I walked into places, people would be like, "Hey, diva." So I know what I'm embarking on again. There is a little bit of nerves that come with that, obviously.
And did appearing on the show immediately change your life, or did the real struggle continue afterward?
I had to rebuild again when I came back from the show. I had
Mhm.
to completely rebuild. Again, it taught me to be a survivor and had the ability, and I did it. Ironically enough, first of all, my ex mother in law gave me a car. I think God maybe didn't give me the best mother, but he gave me the best mother in law in the whole entire world, right? I've been divorced for 17 years. So she gave me a car. And once I got the car, ironically enough, my story had been publicized. I wasn't put out in the best light. I go to work for the number one PR firm in Dallas. So I rebuilt my life and then I ended up ultimately back in Florida for a while. I'm back here in Dallas now working on projects, but I have partners in Florida as well. So I'll be going back and forth between the two cities or states. And so, anyways, it was just a lot of irony there that I ended up being exposed on national television and not the best light, and then working for the largest PR firm in
I
Dallas.
often still needs, it takes courage to be on the public forum and share your story. Not everyone could do it.
No, and it's not for everybody. And also, something that I do want to say is that I've always been this way. I'm careful with timing what I share because there are still things that I'm healing from that I don't want to make public, right? So I think what's exciting about this juncture in my life and this journey and this time around is that I get to pick how the story's told now, right?
That's right.
So it's very rewarding. I feel I'm getting my name back, and thanks to people like you for having me on your show.
It's a
I'm
pleasure.
thankful.
So, Amber, once the episode was aired, what was the public reaction? Or should I say, were there any messages or responses from viewers that deeply stayed with you?
My friends really protected me, and so did the treatment center that I was in from even really seeing any of that. My friends were devastated by the show. The people who knew me, knew how I grew up, were very angry that my mother, in particular, did not choose to tell the truth. They were deeply hurt by the show. I've watched it again now recently because of projects I'm working on. I don't care about the comments. They didn't live it. They don't matter to me. What I cared about was how much it hurt my friends.
Now, your friends are everything to you. And what matters is you do whatever you could in your capacity to make your life easy and let your friends know that if they are there in this world to support you, you are also here to support them whenever they need you.
Yeah, and you know what? They're all very excited about the adventures that I'm on now and the fact that several of them are going to appear in my documentary that we're working on. So, no, none of those comments ever bothered me. George Myers always says 10% of the people aren't going to like you no matter what you do. I don't focus on that 10%. And by the way, I have a family of choice. And I know who my people are and I know who are on my team. So everybody else can say what they want. It's not here nor there to me. They didn't live it.
So, Amber, this is where your story becomes incredibly inspiring because somehow, from all the pain and instability, you rebuild your life at an unbelievable speed. At what moment did you decide, I'm going to rebuild it again?
Listen, I'm still in the rebuilding, right? So I should have made this decision early on too, but I made the decision to bring in people that are smarter than me and put myself in a great team because I'm great at speaking and talking and creating. I'm very creative. I've got a very creative mind, but I'm horrible at operations and running businesses and structures. So I just said, I'm going to bring a team in that knows how to do all this stuff. I know a lot of people, and there's this saying, people always think that success is overnight, when in
It is
fact,
not.
it's not. KFC is Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
When you hear about Journal, whatever his name was, that built the business, he was like in his 70s before he got it right. People will probably eventually look at this and be like, oh, where'd this girl come from? This was an overnight success. I can assure you it was not. Thank God I was surrounded by great people, and I now have people around me that are smarter than me and could do the things that I can't do. And it definitely didn't happen overnight.
Oh, that is for sure. And so, Amber, what was the first step in rebuilding your confidence and identity?
The very first step, and thankfully, again, where I'm at right now, I had helped a gentleman through divorce, and I didn't even know how much I had impacted his life, which is very interesting. I was on a television show years ago, and they were promoting or talking about my business. And one of his friends saw what I was doing to help people through divorce, and she was going through a divorce. So she came to my event. And again, this to me is like a God thing, right? So this was years and years ago because I haven't even had the business for 9, 10 years now. And as I was going through this struggle and this journey, the most recent struggle, I would call them every day or him a lot and tell them what was happening. And finally, he said, Amber, get back to Texas, get back to the people that love you. You can stay with me. And just having that moment to let my brain work again. Because when you're in survival mode, you're like, oh my God, where am I going to stay tonight? Where am I going? What am I going to do about a car? One thing that I tell people that I think is super important is that sometimes people say, oh, survival's day to day. No, sometimes it's second to second, right?
That's right.
But him allowing me a safe place to be as I finish my projects and not have to be worried 24/7 has been a blessing that I never will even be able to repay to him, except for he's gonna be one of my partners. The music. Again, what you do for today for somebody, you never know how that's going to benefit you in the future, right? An act of
That's
kindness
right.
today could turn into something that saves your life tomorrow.
And Amber, today you are an award-winning speaker and public coach. How did public speaking enter your life?
I'm funny. I know they say public speaking is like almost people's number one fear, and sometimes
It
over.
is?
I've always been like, no, put me on stage, put me on stage, put me on camera. God gifted me with a voice. What can I say? I've always loved speaking and sharing inspiration from just a very early age. Unfortunately for me, in a weird way, I was in the media from the time I was 15 because when your friend goes missing, the cameras want to be in your face, showing all this pain and destruction, and you've got helicopters over your head, and you really don't want cameras in your face at that point. But it's always something that I've loved to do.
And was speaking or public speaking therapeutic for you, or it was terrifying at first place?
I've never been terrified of a stage.
You always loved talking about anything and
Yeah.
everything on
Yeah.
stage.
I'm not a great actress though. I'm not good when they cue me on the cards and I
Yeah.
have to do that. And I had to do a commercial one time and I absolutely hated it. You do the same thing over and over a million times. Hats off to the actresses out there. It's a talent I don't have.
Do you remember the very first time you spoke on the stage? Very first speaking engagement? Do you remember
Oh,
it?
I remember my first performance on stage. I love to
Okay.
do that, right? So I won the talent show and I got to be in the talent show in fifth grade. And I thought, oh my God, I've made it. So that was my first memory of stage. I wasn't even speaking, I was dancing. But oh, I remember one that'll really freak you out.
Oh,
Do you know who Zig Ziglar is?
Zig Ziglar. I've heard about it.
Huge motivational speaker, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody in Texas knew him. He was amazing. Great man, by the way. So I'm at an event. Zig Ziglar is known for speaking, right? He grew his business that way. He's a motivational speaker. Everybody knew him. And I had to speak after him. And so that's a little nerve wracking in itself. But he gets up and he talks about how great his family is, how great his marriage is. And I get up and I'm having to talk about divorce.
Huh.
That was a little nerve wracking. But no, I've always enjoyed speaking.
And when did you realize your story had the power to genuinely impact people?
I've known that for a long time. Divas was really the first threshold that I knew for sure that I was impacting lives. But prior to that, I was in real estate. And when real estate, I did a lot of speaking and I even did some stuff with that. But really, where I knew my life could make a difference was through the divorce.
So I want to touch base on your book called Divas. So in brief, could you let us know what does Divas means and why did you write it?
So DIVA stands for Divorcing Independent Very Able Survivors.
Okay.
Basically, when I was going through my divorce, I felt, have you ever taken a snow globe and just thrown it down and imagine it shattered?
Mm-hmm.
I had what everybody thought was a perfect life. I had the Mercedes and the house on the water and the two perfect kids. But in fact, when the divorce happened, that all went away. So I actually prayed about it. And I said, because so many of my friends were just reaching out to me and they were saying, like, what did you do? How'd you do this? What real? I mean, I was a realtor, so they didn't ask me what realtor I used, but they, what financial planner, what attorney. And I just started thinking about it. Like, these people really need help. So I prayed about it. And I woke up and I heard you're going to go through the worst of the worst, but when you get better, you're going to be better than ever again. And I just wrote down Divorcing Independent Very Able Survivors. So actually, the book I'm working on now, the latest book, is called Fractured Beauty.
Fractured Beauty.
Yes, Fractured Beauty. And that comes from my whole life, even as a kid. Like literally, my nickname was Miss Pretty. And I found it very, very annoying, actually. I'm like, I'm more than pretty, I'm smart. I do have something like a photographic memory as well. So all my illnesses, all my mental health stuff isn't bad. But it was annoying because you're like, oh, people don't really see like I'm a nice person. I don't know how to explain it. And then in my teen years, much of my life, but starting in my teen years, I got called Marilyn as much as I got called Amber. If I'd walk in a room, people would be like, oh, Marilyn. So I thought Fractured Beauty was such a nice name because, again, people so often judge the outside, but they don't know what's going on in the inside. So that's the actual book I'm working on at this moment.
And was writing your story emotionally difficult?
It was. And I've also written 2 scripts recently. And to be honest, the scripts were a little harder because of the way you write them. And for 3 hours writing my second script, I cried. But it was therapeutic too, to get it on paper and to, wow, this is really like a story, right? So, yeah, while it can be difficult, I think it's also rewarding.
And what advice would you give someone listening right now who feels their voice doesn't matter?
Your voice matters for sure. You're as sick as your secrets. And a lot of people might not want your voice to be heard, especially if they're hurting you, but your voice matters and
And
somebody cares.
just remember, your mission has become much bigger than personal success. So you're now advocating for awareness, compassion, and systematic reform. So, why is this mission so deeply personal for you?
Because so many people are suffering from generational abuse. There's a few reasons, right? I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. And that's part of it. I know because I do talk to people on a daily basis that if the trauma is not healed, you can't have a healthy relationship. You're going to end up in a divorce. Your kids are going to end up going through that trauma. So I think the sooner and the more, and again, I want to thank people like you for having me on the show. This isn't a cultural thing. It's not whether you're white, brown, or black, whatever. This is a human thing, right? And we've got to stop the generational abuse. It leads to poverty, it leads to divorce, it leads to mental health issues, it leads to violence. And so people like us, and I want to collaborate with you even more,
Yeah,
but
sure.
people like
Definitely.
us thankfully have a platform, but there are a lot of people that don't. And so our message needs to be hate divides, love multiplies. And let's love people through this. Let's love them through the trauma and let's start healing.
I think you have a pure soul. That is what it is.
So do
And
you.
so, Amber, in your opinion, what are mental health system failing people the most today?
They're feeding them medications instead of doing the real therapy, which again, I was blessed to get because I did go through the Dr. Phil program, but I know the opposite side of it, right? So the Dr. Phil sent me to a private treatment center, and there I had 90 days to decompress, and they did address some of the trauma. There are things I did not fully understand until now, but 100%, you cannot keep throwing these people on hospitals and just medicating them. They need serious therapy. We've got to get down to the trauma. Again, I want to go back to Harville Hendrix, the
Yeah.
book Keeping the Love You Find, in his therapy. In fact, as I'm working with him, I'm going to suggest that any counselors that I suggest in the future are trained by him because he gets down to those childhood wounds. Our subconscious is formed by the time we're 6. We don't even know everything we're carrying. And until you unpack that, you can't heal.
That's
That's
right.
you can medicate people all day long, but if you don't fix the problem, right? It's if you're diabetic and you take insulin, but you eat sugar every second that you can, you're not going to get better because the problem's your sugar.
Yeah, the root cause problem is sugar. It's not the medication.
And the root cause of these mental health issues is the trauma. Is talking about it. I don't really understand, except for we are today, aren't we?
Yeah, makes sense. Amber, what changes would you like to see in how law enforcement respond to mental health crisis?
Again, so because there were 13 jurisdictions involved in my situation, the one who made the initial mistake did not have a trained mental health team. And I feel that's very important, not just for the person who's going through the trauma, but also for the officers responding to these situations. Again, I'm not a violent person, but somebody who's dealing with complex PTSD like myself that is violent, and if an officer is responding, he could end up shot. So I think having the departments have a mental health team is very important, and training on it.
Yep, I think so. That is what it should be. And Amber, why do you think compassion is still missing from so many conversations around mental illness?
Because people are scared of mental illness, right? Unfortunately, we do turn on our TV a lot, especially here in the US, to shootings. And so people are scared. They're scared that people like me are dangerous, or if they have it, that people are going to think they're crazy. There's so many.
It's like having a taboo.
Yeah, it is. And I say this now. I say, listen, I think labels are for cans and not people. I've been diagnosed with just about everything, right? So, really, yes, it is taboo. And that's sad. We need to have real conversations around this because oftentimes, again, it's the trauma that's actually caused it.
That's right. And what message would you give families trying to support loved ones dealing with mental health struggles?
They really need to get support. I deal with it myself, but there's good books out there you can read. And there's one called Walking on Eggshells, specifically for borderline. But treat it with compassion. Listen, try to understand what's really causing it and validate their feelings. That's why I've chose not to have my blood mother in my life, because she said on stage, had a perfect childhood. I described my childhood to you. I don't think you would think that was a great childhood. You need to validate, even if you were the person to create some of that trauma. There's things about my life that have unfortunately created trauma for my kids. You have to own those mistakes. You have to validate their feelings and make changes so that it doesn't repeat. The pattern doesn't repeat.
And if policymakers, healthcare leaders, or law enforcement agencies were watching this conversation right now, what would you want them to hear?
Amber is coming. Listen, don't abuse power. And while a lot of officers, and again, I want to commend the Colony Police Department in particular for handling this situation with such grace and dignity. Listen, these guys don't have an easy job, right? They're risking their lives every single day out there. But there are some, and it's just like in the hospitals that I've noticed, that don't do the job right and they abuse power. And I was, in fact, victimized, and a crime was committed by me. A felony was committed against me, which first started this whole thing with me last year. And the officer refuses to press charges. And that really triggered me because of my history and my pattern. And the guy was abusing his power. You're not above the law, even if you're in law enforcement, and it's going to catch up to you if you abuse power. It's the same thing in these hospitals with these doctors. I've been in hospitals and I've had doctors that I guarantee you I'm actually smarter than the doctor. And especially, they don't like it. And they've kept me longer or done things or put me on certain medications that I didn't need to be on. And they're abusing power. And that's a problem in the system. There needs to be checks and balances. But for the ones who are doing it right, I commend them because it's a hard job. It's a hard job to be in these psychiatric hospitals. It's a hard job to be out there fighting crime on the streets. I guess I have a dual message, right? Thank you to the ones who are doing it right. And to the ones of you who are abusing the system and abusing the power, you're part of the problem.
All right, Amber, let's lighten the energy just a little with a quick rapid fire round. First
Rapid
thing,
fire.
yeah, what comes to your mind? All right. So there's only one answer to it, only one sentence, not more
Oh,
than. All right, let me start it. One word that describes your survival journey.
faith,
Faith. All right. One thing homelessness taught you.
survival,
One belief that changed your life forever.
boundaries,
What does success mean to you today?
changing lives.
Changing life. All right. And if your younger self could see you now, what do you think she would say?
Oh, thank God you finally figured it out.
All right, Amber, before we close this conversation, I think there are many people listening right now who may feel invisible, broken, or hopeless. What would you say directly to someone who feels like they have absolutely nothing left?
I've been there, and turn on our show, get a hold of one of us, and we'll connect them into some good people, because there's always hope. Hope is the one thing in life that is priceless. When you lose hope, it's very difficult, but you have to do the next best thing. And I don't know what that is for them. Maybe it's picking up the phone, maybe it's emailing one of us, but reach out to somebody. And listen, don't stop reaching out. If the first person doesn't pick up, find the next person, but you're not alone.
Yeah, because there's always a light at the end of a tunnel.
There's always a way.
All right,
And it's
and
not
looking
always easy.
it is. Looking back at your entire journey from homelessness to becoming an award-winning speaker and advocate, what are you most proud of today?
I'm most proud of my family of choice and the people that stuck with me,
People that stuck with you, why do you say that?
because it wasn't easy for them.
Okay. So because they always wanted to support you, help you, love you, but
It's
it's
not easy when you love somebody to see what has happened and to be there and to support them. I guess the thing I'm most proud of is ultimately I built the business that saved my life.
I can see that you're being a bit emotional right now and a bit teary. You've got a teary eyes, which is
Well,
okay.
listen, I've been conditioned to handle pain, and I know how to process it now. What I can't handle is when it hurts the people around me. And that's
Okay.
been very difficult to watch. It's been difficult to see how my different friends have responded. This didn't just hurt me. There were so many people that loved me. This hurt everybody who loved me, everybody around me. And that's very difficult. And it could have been prevented. And so, yeah, that's still painful.
It is. And what legacy do you want to leave behind?
One day I want to have a show called Naughty Queens, where it's
Mm,
me and all my gay friends on a
okay.
yacht. The legacy I want to leave behind. I don't want my grandson or my grandchildren to continue in a generational abuse cycle. And I want them to know that I'm the voice that hopefully makes change and impact on that.
All right. And the last one, Amber, if your story become a movie, what would the title be?
A fractured beauty.
Amber, thank you for your honesty, courage, and vulnerability today. Your story is proof that even in the darkest moments, transformation is possible. And to everyone watching or listening, if this conversation impacted you, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. This is Ravi Athale Perspective. I'm your host, Ravi Athale, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.